in this debate and discussion. So without further ado, I'll pass you over to Suzanne, who will outline how the meeting will progress.
Hello everybody, thanks for joining us this evening. I just want to remind everybody who is in the Zoom call that if you'd like to ask a question, could you please type a Q and then your question in the comments section and the chat, and also raise your hand using the raise your hand function so that we can spot you, so we can bring you in and you can ask your own question to the panellists. So without further ado, we'll start with the opening comments, and I'll take you first to Marion.
Hi there, am I on? Hi there, good evening everyone. Thanks very much to AUOB for organising the panel tonight and for giving me the opportunity to be here. Very few of you will recognise me or know my name. I'm not an elected politician, I'm not a representative of a political party, I don't write blogs and I don't do podcasts. So why am I here? I'm here because just like all of you, I want independence. I'm a Scottish woman and my voice and my vote matters. The 2014 independence movement was never meant to succeed. In their arrogance, London never anticipated that we Scots would do the unthinkable and put our differences aside for the chance of independence. Despite the result, we shook the foundations of the Union. As our 2021 independence movement, it's never been more crucial that we find a way to set aside our differences once again and use our collective momentum to drive our movement forward. It would be very easy to slip into a critique of the various factions at the heart of all our discord and animosity, but that would detract from the opportunity for like-minded folk like us to share ideas which will help to generate the positive actions that we're so well known for. Regardless of their many faults, the SNP remain the political wing of our movement, and it's up to all of us to figure out how we use them to our advantage instead of giving them absolute control to dominate and dictate the pace that we move at. It's absolutely doable to hold the SNP to account on their policies, and traditionally we would do that at the ballot box. But to coin that phrase, now really is not the time. Whatever our feelings are about the party or its representatives, the harsh reality for independence supporters is that if we want to keep independence on the agenda, we must lend them our support one more time, because without them, we can't progress. But without us, they cannot win. For many of us, the distinct lack of leadership and independence has left us feeling adrift. Despite their years in office, the absence of clear leadership for independence activists from the SNP has left us with little to work with. In terms of campaign strategy, timing, or anything resembling a white paper to guide activists in the electorate, none of it has been produced. So as a movement, it's time for us to take back our power. But in order to do so, we really must give the SNP another term in office to make good on their promises. But that doesn't mean that we give them free rein. As much as I support a plebiscite in the May election, I doubt Keith Brown will include such a bold act given the release of their famous 11-point plan. We know that governments can hold plebiscites to test whether people support or oppose a proposed action, and we understand that governments are not legally bound to the results of such plebiscites. So the overall risk of failure is reduced. We're seeking people's opinions, not necessarily people's permission. If every independent supporter started emailing Keith Brown and put pressure on MPs, MSPs to demand a plebiscite, it would put pressure on the SNP. I'm still not convinced that they would deliver it in May. So we must hope for the best, but prepare for the worst. To continue to progress independence, we need to keep lending the SNP our vote in May, even if we've got to choke back a bit of bile to do it. Once they're secured for the next term, we need to ramp up our efforts to bring that pressure to bear. Instead of using social media to tear each other down, we really must utilise its reach to inform and educate, organise ourselves nationally and locally. In its essence, we need to take our power back. We need to stop fighting amongst ourselves and remember that our strength really does lie in a united front. Whatever policies you disagree with, whichever politicians you dislike. It is time to put that aside and find ways to come together. Now is the time for the final push. If we can hold the line just long enough, lend the SNP our vote one more time in May, plebiscite or not, we buy ourselves time to sort ourselves out, but more importantly, we keep independence on the agenda and we buy independence time. Thank you.
That was fantastic, Marion. Thank you very much. So next up, we've got Nathalia Urban. If you can unmute, and great to hear from you.
Hello, everybody, and hola to all Brazilians who are also watching tonight. I just want to talk a little bit about something that is not being publicized enough here in Scotland, is that the fact that now people like me, immigrants, New Scots, are able to vote as well. After the Scottish election bill has passed in 2019, around 55,000 people will be granted the benefit of voting in this country. And us, as someone that also supports independence, I think we have to see these people as 55,000 possible independent supporters. And why I'm saying this is because I think that sometimes, and this is something that other people, other immigrants, other BME have talked to me about it, is that they feel that sometimes the rhetoric used by some people from the indie movement is sort of alienating for those who are not aware of how politics here work and how the independence would benefit people that are not born and bred Scots. So I think that it's very important that we have to reach out to those people, especially because immigrants have the potential of being a game change in the referendum, in elections. There are proven results, even here in Europe, that immigrants have gained or made parties to lose elections. So we please do not underestimate my power of vote here. As someone that is from Latin America, of course, I'm super passionate about popular movements, and I think that it's one of the things that made me like a lot of the Scottish independent movement is the popular appeal. But I think that somehow in the last couple of years the discourse is coming across a little bit more uptighty, or like not so in touch with regular people that are not into politics. I think that it's extremely vital to connect people. Once I had the opportunity to talk with a trade unions leader from Nicaragua, and he told me that politics is made in the streets, is made with people. That's why it's vital for us to be in the streets, to be reaching out to workers, to small communities, to those who don't feel represented by those who are in power nowadays. And we have that advantage because I can guarantee that we won't have none of the unionist parties reaching out to the immigrant community here. I work with political journalism, and I can remember a single time I have had any union politics coming talk to me about local politics, just like foreigner issues. So we have an advantage. Also, we have an advantage that none of these people grew up hearing that British Empire propaganda. So they will also be more into hear what the people from the Scotland independence movement have to say. I just want to finishing up very quickly with a quote that I think that is something that all of those who are fighting for emancipation, that are fighting for a better life have to keep in mind is a quote from Thomas Sankara, who says that our revolution is and should continue to be a collective effort of revolutionaries to transform reality, to improve the concrete situation of the masses of our country. So I think this is something we have to keep in mind. We are revolutionaries. This is our revolution, and we have to do everything to keep this revolution within its principles. And its principle is to get independence. Thank you.
Thank you very much. That was brilliant. Loved that. We'll bring in our next panelist, who needs no introduction. I will ask him to unmute. It is, of course, the famous Grouse beater himself. So if you can unmute for us, please, Gareth.
How's that? You want me to say a few words? Well, there'll be quite a few. I liked Nathalia's point of being revolutionary, but people must understand, if you're going to be a genuine revolutionary, you're going to outrage some people's opinions. And if you go around soft-footing and saying, you know, let's not insult anybody, let's make sure, you know, whatever we say keeps people happy, you're not a revolutionary. The other point I'd like to make is that if you're looking at me with this background here, you're probably not thinking, well, that's a working class guy, but that is my origins. I am, don't let my bourgeois appearance fool you. I'm from a working class but very talented family. You can be talented and working class. It's not the fashion these days. The fashion these days is for Etonians to be employed in the best jobs, the arts and in politics. I'm a runaway from home, and I'm telling you that because I can identify with anybody in the working class. The other day when I was in bed in hospital, the man next to me, I heard weeping. He was on the telephone, lived in a tiny village in the West Lothian of Edinburgh. He had no money. He had lost his firm, his wife, still has a couple of kids, lost his car and was down to £2.50 and had no way of getting home. So I'm a guy who has money, but quite soon will have no need for money. So I gave him his taxi fare home. So let no one tell you, because you look as though you're an educated man and you can talk with educated words, that you're not working class. If we are to be revolutionaries, then that's a dynamic that will propel us forward. I am someone who chose to work on the internet because I could not get the party of power to utilize my skills properly. I decided that I would speak to as many people as possible who would care to read and care to listen about Scotland's history, past and present, and their hopes. And that independence wasn't an abstraction. It's about civil and constitutional rights, the things you need to actually take care of your own country, to feel confident, an upright person, a person who feels that they are making decisions, participating and living by those decisions, whether they're good or bad. So the SNP couldn't find a way of using my skills to good effect, but I'm a member of the public. I just chose this way of doing it. I'm not a cybernat. A Tory coined that phrase, So I take offence when our Scottish newspapers attack cybernats as if we are some sort of subsect of Scottish life, rather like the Americans portrayed the Vietnamese fighters in the jungle as gooks. You know, that way removes the humanity from the participants. So despite what people say about the current chaos in the party and government at Holyrood, I know even people like me who are soured by what they've been doing, that we will unite in purpose the minute they or any other party says, I guarantee if you vote for me, I will aim and get independence by any route possible. Not by one route, by any route possible, and that will be my sole imperative. That's me, Gareth. Thank you for listening.
Thank you very much, Gareth. That was brilliant. Next, before we bring in David Henry as the final panelist to give us some opening comments, I just want to repeat that if you're in the Zoom meeting and you want to ask your question direct to the panelists and you want either Suzanne or myself to call you in, we will. But what we need you to do is indicate that you want to ask a question. So please type a Q in the Zoom chat with your question and put your hand up and we will call you in soon. So we will get to that section after David. So on you go, David, the floor is yours.
Thank you, folks. Pleasure to be with you all and to have the opportunity to discuss what is a very important subject. Covering a couple of things that's already been said by panelists, I came to the idea of independence very late in life. In fact, it started in 2014. So I blame everything that's happened in my life in the last 7 years on Alex Salmond. If he hadn't made such a great argument for independence, I wouldn't be here and I wouldn't be in the SNP because I had never voted for them before. So it wasn't on my radar at all. It's been on my radar ever since. We do all need to come together. We do all need to stay focused on what we're trying to achieve and all the benefits that it brings. But I've been on a real roller coaster on education. I didn't go to university, but I've had a great education in the last few years. I've sat in on the Court of Appeal, the Joanna Cherry case, and I sat and listened and took lots of notes. And it became glaringly obvious during that case that Scotland is already independent. We do not need permission from Westminster. Westminster has no input whatsoever. They don't have the power to stop us or grant us anything. And this is quite clearly the case. And yet here we are still stuck in this, if you like, broken record of we somehow think we need permission from the other side to do what actually any normal nation can do. So bringing you a bit more up to date, you probably have known in the last day or so, I've been with a group of others, we have produced the manifesto for Indy. And it's not some crazy idea that hasn't got any basis in law. In fact, it's very much based on historical fact. It clearly has weight of law behind it. It complies with the claim of right. And just like Gareth had just said, we need a party that will be bold. History favors people that take the opportunity. No one is going to come along and just hand it to us and say, okay, you've won. And if we look at, so people have been asking the questions, I noticed, how can we deliver that? Well, it's very simple. We get behind a manifesto, we all begin to work together, we engage with our elected officials, we contact the party that we want to support, and we ensure that they deliver a manifesto that we want to support. And there is no manifesto published by any of the main parties, including the SNP or the Greens or anyone else at this moment. So now is the time to influence the content of the manifesto. that they're going to ask you, me, and everyone else to vote for them. Well, I agree. I want to vote for a party that gives me an absolute cast iron guarantee and states that the Scottish people assert that the Scottish Parliament is the only Parliament that is empowered to represent the sovereign rights of the Scottish people. If we do that, and if they deliver that, then we will be independent and be running our own affairs this year. So now's the time to get together. Obviously, I'm happy to discuss if anyone's got questions about this document that's out there. It wasn't written just by me. And in fact, as I say, it's historically correct, legally sound. We don't need to ask permission from anybody. We simply declare it that that's the party we're voting for. That's the manifesto commitment. In the last 24 hours, I've sent this document to every corners of the world, to the EU president, to politicians in Ireland, to politicians in Australia. I even put a message on the White House's own website saying, we need your help, we want you to support us. So, it's also gone to all MSPs and all MPs. So it's out there, it's ready for all of us to get behind and start shaping the next manifesto. And that's what I would say we all need to do. We all need to come together. Fortune favors the brave. Let's be brave. Let's deliver independence this year.
Thank you very much, David. I just want to reiterate to people, if you would like to come in and ask our panellists any questions, can you please use the raise your hand function? If you look at the bottom of the panel on the screen, there's a tab called reactions. If you click that, there's an option there to raise your hand. And it just means we can see you and we know who to bring in to ask their questions. But the first question I'd like to ask tonight is one that's came from social media. And it's actually, we seemingly have a plan, according to the SNP, an 11-point plan. So what is everybody's views on the 11-point plan? So if I could bring in Marion first. Oh, you're on mute, Marion.
That me?
That's you?
Yeah. I think if I'm being perfectly honest, my actual opinion of the 11-point plan is best kept between me and God, because this is not the platform to fully express how dire I actually think it is. I think it was written in the back of a fag packet. I think it was in an emergency response to this particular panel's last event and the knowing the pressure that was going to be brought to bear at the following assembly. I think it was a dire move. I think it cut under. Well, not so much cut under, I think it disrespected us to a certain extent, because it's a plan for a referendum. It's not a plan for independence. It says nothing about independence. It offers us no structure, no guidance in how we bring it about. It is just a bunch of words on a page that essentially says we're going to ask for permission for a Section 30, they're going to say no, and when they do, this time we'll go to court. And that is not helpful. It's not helpful to us. It's not helpful to the movement generally. Tensions are so frayed right now. People are losing hope. People are falling by the wayside. We need clarity. We need structure. We need leadership. And if we can't find it in the SNP, people are going to look elsewhere. The SNP need to up their game. That 11-point plan is a shambles. It is a poor excuse for a party who've held power for the better part of 20 years, knowing that their sole raison d'etre is to deliver independence. They must do better.
Does anybody want to jump in next?
I possibly could. I mean, I'm quite new to the SNP. I joined only in 2014, the day after the referendum, funny enough. My view on this, and I've been very excited to hear some of the ideas and to go to conference for the last, 6 years now. Our most recent conference, we weren't really given an opportunity to discuss anything of merit. I objected to that, in fact, and had written a resolution for transparency, which never got to conference, along with lots of others. I totally understand that a political party needs to be careful what goes out in the public domain, because it's, I mean, if anything, other parties have shown in the past that if you don't control things too much, you end up spiraling out of control. Look what happened to Labour. They're out of power, probably unelectable for a long time. However, there is a balance here. There's plenty of people that are not elected officials. And I think the one thing that I wanted to, I didn't mention, but I think politics is far too important to be left to politicians. I think politicians have too many pressures on them, both public, that therefore politics starts at the grassroots, which is probably why we're all here. And the grassroots are not some second-rate members of society. Many of them come from all walks of life, have lots of experience. I have to tell you, the manifesto for Indy, although we thought we had to come up with something, most of it came from other people with huge amounts of experience. I was very surprised, and I thought, how does this happen, that these people come together and they've got experience of international affairs and the Constitution, and others are expert on the law. So somebody's asked, how do we do this? Well, we do it by finding the document, printing it out, reading it, contacting via email your politician, whether they're an MSP, an MP, or in whatever party they are, and tell them what you want to vote for, because that is what they're there for. So I agree, the 11-point plan, my view on the 11-point plan is it's a discussion document. I think it was pulled together hastily. I think its huge flaw at the center of it is asking for permission. It's asking Westminster to grant permission for us to have a referendum. And if they don't give permission, we'll go to court. Exactly what court is that? And why are we asking for permission in the first place? So it's quite clear, international law is very clear. I'm not some radical person, so our plan says there's 10 things in there. We want international recognition immediately if everybody voted for a party. And the second thing, and it wasn't my idea, was that we should reinstate the EU continuity bill, because it's already the work's already been done. And the result of that would be we'd be able to go to the EU and get a protocol, which is somebody's in our group has said this and has expertise and said, yes, they will grant it, meaning our fisheries, our producers, our agriculture will have instant access to the single market, no customs paperwork, no queues of trucks. So straight away, there's an immediate benefit. This is something that can be delivered. It's not difficult. It's already, we've got the legislation sitting there. We just need to reenact it. So there's a practical step that can be done immediately and for jobs to be saved immediately. So what are we waiting for? So I think we've all been waiting for somebody else higher up than us to give us this plan and give us the date. Well, that hasn't happened. So it's up to us to do it.
Yeah.
So this panel and what we're discussing here right now is part of the process.
Absolutely, you're absolutely correct on that. Gareth, do you have anything to say on the 11-point plan?
I liked a bit about international recognition. I mean, Scotland is recognised as a country worldwide. We've had so much influence with our inventions and our part in the British Empire. So the question that pops up in your head is international recognition. Why were we not doing anything about that in the past 4 years? Your viewers and listeners should understand that I have the distinction of being thrown out of the SNP when not a member of the SNP. And I'm told that the only way they will apologise for that is if I reapply to become a member of the SNP. So that's how contorted they've got their bureaucracy. I don't think the SNP is falling apart. I think it's fallen way behind the mood of the people. The first real shock I got of that was seeing Nicola Sturgeon with a big yellow bus behind her with, vote to get Brexit, vote no to Brexit, when it should have said vote for independence. I mean, here was a God-given opportunity to capitalize on a situation where it was clear the English state were going to weaken themselves. But instead, our First Minister and whoever advised her rushed off down to England to tell the English to do it the Scottish way, which is kind of hypocritical because we're trying to tell English, don't tell us how to run our country. So as far as I can see, the SNP has fallen at least 2 years behind the mood of the people of Scotland. And you have to keep in mind that the 55% who originally said no in the 2014 referendum, according to the university analysis, 37% of them wanted greater powers, short of full independence. So none of that was capitalized. And I have been doing my best over the past few years to point out that the SNP are falling down. They're not being educating in any vigorous or robust way the populace on what are the benefits of independence. Here's what happened. We could, I don't mind frightening people now and again. Here is what will happen if we are not an autonomous nation. And beyond that, they should have been composing a new accord so that when the moment came, we wanted to tear up the treaty because we have been lied and cheated, and the treaty was broken the minute England pulled the whole of the United Kingdom countries and provinces out of Europe, that we could say, right, that's it, there is no treaty. But here is a new accord, a new relationship. We have withdrawn. We are withdrawing our MPs, same as the Irish MPs. It doesn't mean that they are redundant. The Irish MPs get to vote in Westminster policies. They get to lobby Westminster politicians and groups. They don't get all the benefits. They don't get all the expenses. But nevertheless, they can still be a force for good if they're working from Scotland. And that's where they really ought to be, because that's the first signal to the British state that we will no longer play their party games. And the next thing was, we should have said, here is the new accord. Let's negotiate on this. The treaty is dead. But no one is courageous enough in the current SNP to do that. When the SNP headquarters tells me, oh, Gareth will have to reapply to become a member in order for us to think about an apology, then you know that they have caught themselves up in the most banal bureaucracy, worthless of a nation trying to reestablish its liberty. You must forgive me for my voice. My current illness has removed some of it.
Thank you, Gareth. Just before I bring Nathalia in, can I just quickly ask David, there's a lot of questions in the chat and on social media asking where they can see a copy of this manifesto for Indy.
Right, it's on Facebook. If you go onto Facebook and just type in the @ and Manifesto 2021, it'll take you to our Facebook page that we set up specifically to distribute the document, and you can see it there. It's also all over social media. I think it will be published in the next couple of days on a number of the other promoting websites. So I think it'll get pretty well spread. I mean, there's 10 points in it. It's really, I can go through it later on if they want me to, because it's 10 simple steps. And in fact, everything that Gareth has just said, not only do I think, what are we waiting for? You know, we're waiting for permission. We're never going to get permission now. You know, when we look at how we got a referendum in 2014, we got one because the unionists thought it was a sure deal they were going to win. We only had 23% support. It ended up at 45%, and they threw everything, including the kitchen sink at us, promised all sorts of things, which of course haven't been delivered. And Gareth is absolutely right about that last point. The moment we voted in Scotland in the Brexit referendum to remain, and England decided to ignore the express democratic will of the people of Scotland, was the moment that they destroyed the union. The Act of Union was torn in two and destroyed. It doesn't exist anymore because the Act of Union made it very clear we never gave up our sovereignty. We never gave up the rights to our laws. Scotland, that is part of the union. We went into that union with England. England's a completely different system. Their sovereignty, if you remember, Nigel Farage and his team of Brexiteers went on and on about making their parliament sovereign. That's what it was all about, parliamentary sovereignty. You'll remember it was that and the big red bus that they drove around in with a lie on it.
We shall take our country back, remember it?
Yes, yes.
But not you, Scotland.
Yeah, oh yes, they believe in independence. Independence Day. Remember when they got their vote through? It's Independence Day. We've got our country back. You think, which country is that? But so absolutely, they broke the Act of Union. We were totally ignored. We were now a homogenous British people. The British people have spoken. We're going to have a red, white, and blue Brexit. I mean, all this total sloganism, total meaningless nonsense. And nobody up this end of the country, no one here in Scotland stood up and said, no, you don't. We entered a union which was a union of equals. We did not give up our sovereignty. We didn't hand it to you for you to administer it. It's still ours. So the people of Scotland are sovereign. There is no question about this. It's perfectly legal and it's internationally recognized. And it goes back, I had a little bit of a laugh because in the last 2 days, we had to go through all the facts and figures and the dates and pick the ones that we thought were important. And Scotland became a nation in 892 AD when there was a King Donald II made King of Scots. I made a little stupid joke about it. I didn't know we had a McDonald's back then, but anyway, there you go. And of course, it's been reinforced since then in 1320 and in 1689, and then even much more recently, if we ever needed another line underlining that we are already independent and already in charge of our own future, the claim of right was agreed in the House of Commons on the 4th of July 2018. Now, that's not the first time it's happened, but that's the most recent time. So what are we waiting for? We are already in charge of our own destiny. We just have to tell a party to insert a specific statement in their manifesto and we all vote for it. Hence why I sent the document to overseas politicians, because we need international recognition on the 7th of May. And then, hey presto, there's a hell of a lot of work to be done.
That's right, yeah. Thanks very much, David. Can I bring Nathalia in now?
I just want to comment about the international recognition, because I think it's important to not limit what we are doing here in Scotland to only the European Union. I'm not saying to not dialogue with the European Union, but also to dialogue with the rest of the world. Otherwise, Scotland will be just one more European country that is trying to take advantage of the rest of the world. So people will see Scotland with the more friendly eyes if Scotland starts to dialogue with the rest of the world, especially the global south.
Thanks, Nathalia, and everybody for their answers there. That's great. So I'm going to bring in a couple of Zoom contributions now. So before I'm going to say who they are first. So we've got Alba Mellon with a question, firstly, about the SNP, certainly some of the SNP, about why they're attacking bloggers and activists. That's quite interesting and topical. And then after that, we've got a question by Thomas MacArthur about voting and what's best. I'll let them ask them straight away. But before I do, if Zoom, if those who are making a contribution, a question on Zoom, if you can limit it to about a minute, because we want to get through as many people as possible, and the panelists can try and limit their answers to about 3 or 4 minutes, and then we can get through as many people as we can. So, Alba, Melon, if you want to unmute yourself and away.
Can you hear me okay, Neil?
Yes.
Yeah, good man. No, listen, they've let loose the 3 amigos on us, Angus Robertson, Stuart MacDonald and Alan Smith, right, to hunt us down using the main social media and eliminate us. Like we have been trying for years to eliminate all the unionist trolls that have been attacking us. You should know that as well, Neil. So what's your opinion on that? But just a quick one here. Listen to most of you guys talking tonight. I wish I could swap views for SNP leadership, because we'd be sitting independent right now.
I'm very expensive.
Is that you, Gareth? Is that Gareth that was speaking there?
I don't come cheap.
That's great. Thanks.
You're a good man. Thanks, guys.
John. Brilliant. Thanks, John. That's a good question about why is there such an approach to bloggers and activists online by some in the SNP. So that's interesting. Next up is Thomas. On you go, Thomas.
Hey guys, can you hear me?
Yeah.
Yeah. My question is, there's all these new pop-up parties coming on the scene. I don't know why they didn't start up in 2014, just after the referendum. I think they might be leaving it a little bit too late at the moment. But like I've been told SNP 1 and 2, but then I've been told that if even in that state they get like 500,000 votes and you only get 4 seats, you know what I mean? And they're saying with Alfie and ISP, stuff like that, if you vote for them in your second vote, it'll get the unionists out. So I'm not really sure. I know my first vote's going to be SNP anyway, but it's the second vote that's confusing me now. Like, and that's really what my question is, you know?
Thanks, Thomas. So just to remind, try and keep it just a few minutes each. I know it's difficult, there's a lot to this, but first of all, we'll go to Nathalia, if you want to give an answer to either or both of those questions, please.
To me, it's very strange to have to talk about who I'm voting for, because I came from a country where vote is a secret. So I would rather not to answer when I should vote, because to me it's something super personal. But I think that the issue is something that I was taught by the example of Uruguay. That is a country that had a great success politically of achieving change doing a broad front. So I would not be someone that thinks that frown upon other parties that want independence, because I think everybody should have a space to talk about. We don't live in a dictatorship, so it's everybody's right to have their own ideas exposed and to vote to whomever you want to vote.
Thank you, Nathalia. So next up, we'll ask David Henry.
Well, the 2 questions. The first question was about the media being attacked by people that should probably know better. Why is it happening? I think a lot of what's happening in the movement generally is actually because of frustration and a lack of focus and a lack of a date to coalesce around. I think that's the biggest problem. I mean, I think Nicola Sturgeon has done a very good job at steering the party down a certain route, and if you like, not standing on any landmines, which in politics for any length of time is pretty amazing. You have to look at some of the terrible things that Theresa May did, you know, going for a snap election and it backfiring spectacularly. So we've not had anything like that, but I do think we've been missing a positive vision, a focus. And I think it started to happen more than 2 years ago. I don't think it's her personally. I saw conference being more controlled, more debate wasn't really welcomed. I think we're all poorer when that happens. And I would like to see that finish and end. I'm not afraid of people's opinions. I think perhaps this is also a message out, and I know a couple of people that run some of the blogs, and they're very nice folk, and they're very passionate. I think sometimes people react personally to stuff when maybe they shouldn't. And that goes to all sides, and therefore you end up with this snowball effect and everybody's at each other's throats. But frankly, I stood in an internal election not that long ago for National Secretary, and came a very close second. And I was very determined not to get involved in anything that I thought was controversial or was one-sided. I wanted to be focused on treating everyone with respect and transparency, and that's what I wanted to stick to. And it's very easy to be blown off track because people do fire all sorts of stuff at you on social media, and the smart move is not to reply to it. No matter how angry you get, don't reply to it. I think we need to focus something positive on a date and get round. It's why we've ended up producing this manifesto for Indy, because it's something for people to talk about. It's something people to rally around. And not everyone will like it. Not everybody will like everything that's in there. There'll be lots of people that want to do it differently. Yes, well, fine. But here it's been thrown out there. Let's discuss it, get people round, and start working. And the second question about pop-up parties. Obviously, I'm in the SNP, so the official line from the SNP is both votes SNP. That's the end of the broadcast. Now, people have to make their own mind up. Is there any other legitimate party out there that looks like it could be professionally run, is going to offer any future? Or are there people that just think somehow? Because I tell you what, I did a lot of research the last year or two into the voting system. 2016 was very interesting. I'm not so worldly wise before 2016, but 2016's numbers were very clear. The SNP did very well on the constituency vote in 2016. Pretty certain it'll do the same this time. On the second vote, the list vote, they took 953,000 list votes and got just 4 people elected. The Greens got 150,000 on the second vote and got 6 people elected. So it clearly does work completely differently for a big party versus a much smaller party. And if you looked at the results from the Scottish Conservatives and Scottish Labour, what was remarkable is the results were very different, yet the number of votes that they got in total were almost exactly the same. The only difference was one party got slightly more on the constituency and so got slightly less on the list. The other one got slightly more on the list and slightly less on the constituency. The result was the Conservatives got 16 elected on the list. So the question is out there. It's a very difficult thing to give you a straight answer on. Depends which area you live in, which region. So it depends who is standing there. But I think people should make up their own mind. Ask your politicians, get in touch with them, make up your own mind. It's, after all, it's your vote.
Thanks, David. Gareth, if you want to answer either or both of them, both of those questions.
Just very briefly, agreeing with David, SNP for the constituency vote and another independence party for the list vote. Democracy is about everybody participating. So I believe what the SNP should have said is, well, we want you all to vote for us, but we welcome any new party, any new official, properly registered party that is going to help and assist us gain independence. Because it means ultimately fewer Labour and Tory, you know, the unionist parties. You know, the days when we were offered a false democracy, all 3 parties, the Liberals, the Tories and Labour, were all unionist parties. So we couldn't really change Scotland in any way. We couldn't really create radical progress when they were all pitching for Westminster and England's interests and agenda. But now that the SNP is here, we have a choice. And you'll notice how the older parties throw their hands up in the air. You know, the ones who say they're Democrats, they don't want the SNP. You know, we don't need another party. Incidentally, there will be more parties for independence quite soon. Of that, I can guarantee. Not just the ones who've already announced. So the public's going to find quite a choice. And I've always wished that political parties didn't rely on charismatic leaders. I understand that they do and why they do, but I would rather see our parties, our political parties, run by a committee of really erudite, clever folk with different specialisms, and then they work together when it comes to press announcements and the like. But unfortunately, we have this celebrity thing where, I can give you an example of that. In the hospital, I got a phone call, and then the chief nurse said, "This is for you. I didn't ken you were a political person." And I said, "Well, yes, I'm that kind of thing." "Well, I better tell you now, I've no time for you and Alex Salmond." She hustled off down the corridor. So, but I've met people who say, who actually call Nicola the nippy sweetie, arrogant. They dislike us just as much. And I have to keep telling them, forget the personalities. Think about the principle. Think about the ideals. Think about how you can transform your whole existence. So to me, there's only two important things for Scotland. The first is regaining our nationhood as we had it for hundreds of years. One of the oldest countries in the world, right back for 1,000 years. And the second, even more important goal is to find ways of handling climate change. Scotland is in a tremendously good position geographically, topographically, in terms of our mountains and how high up from the sea we are, because the oceans are going to get taller, get higher as the Arctic ice melts. So we are in trouble, but we have lots of water, and we're in a very good position to be completely self-sustaining if we can get our farming right and the way we grow produce. So those are the two important things. But we can't really handle climate change 100% if we're not independent, because there will be continuous interference from London. And they do it very easily. They just withdraw money. They don't give us any of our money back again. We live under that tyranny of another country governing us. And colonials don't govern a country because they are a charity. They govern a country because they want to exploit its resources and its people. Same from Roman times. As soon as Rome began to implode, off it went across the Mediterranean to take over a little country there. It didn't have the right weapons to look after itself, to defend itself. And then they realized, the Romans, that they had to leave soldiers there. They had to leave supervisors there. We call them placemen. They had to put people in positions of power, and that cost money. But still, they got the bulk of the produce that was grown in that country. They managed to get any number of slaves working for the Roman Empire. But there came a point where it became very costly. So they needed to invade another country in order to extract exactly the same benefits. And that's the British Empire. which still assumes Scotland as part of that entity. So to be autonomous is absolutely critical and urgent. And we have to do that, not just for our human rights, but to beat this massive cataclysmic event that's coming our way, where even the flora and the fauna, who have had nothing to do with man's follies, will die off. We need to be an independent country to handle that for our own people.
Well said, Gareth. So lastly, Marion, what do you think of those two questions? The first one, to repeat them, was why are some prominent high-profile SNP figures, parliamentarians, attacking people in the Yes movement online and bloggers? And the second question was, what do you think about is the best way for people to cast their votes at this election? Is SNP 1 and 2 the best, or is it more advantageous for independents to give your vote to a list party? So what do you think?
Thanks, Neil. First, I'd like to say hello to Big John, who I haven't seen since the last march in Edinburgh, and it's good to see him here with us tonight. And his question is a good one. Why are SNP elected members basically waging an all-out war against anybody who dares to speak out against their actions? And I think it's a really important thing that we need to address, because it is certainly not what we expect of the people we elect to represent us.
Can you imagine, Martin? Can you imagine Martin Luther King saying, "I've got a good speech that I want to give, so call in all the press. I've entitled it, 'I Have a Dream.' See those sons of bitches who've been on the internet and who follow us in marches. I don't want associated with them. Keep them well away. They'll alienate my entire audience." Can you imagine him saying that? I mean, it's just so stupid. But that's part of the British state's attack on our right of participation. And what they're saying is, including the comfy slipper brigade in the SNP, that it's the people who are the problem. Well, no, you guys have been there too long. You can't tell the difference anymore. We elected you. You are our representatives. We gave you a bond of trust. So if you're not listening to us, we will elect someone else.
Mm-hmm. Well, you're very right there, Gareth. Slippery Pete and his wee gang of extremists, I'm going to call them extremists, because their actions are nothing short of extreme. The way that they have actually, and it does extend to that other black subject that we were trying to avoid in the gender issue. There seems to be this agreement in the hierarchy of the SNP that it's perfectly acceptable to take to social media and orchestrate, because that's what happens when you're a person of power. People listen to you, people follow you, and people are influenced by your words and by your deeds. And when you take to social media and you are basically spearheading a campaign against the likes of yourself, Gareth, Barhead Boy, Wings, Jaggett, and yourself, Neil, you've taken a fair old pelting over the years as it happens. You know, when this comes from elected members, it's a very serious problem. For us within the kind of more active end of the movement, but it has a knock-on effect. And I'm going to go back to what Nathalia was saying earlier about the influence that, the way that a lot of international immigrants in Scotland feel put off by the language of our discourse on social media, the way that we attack each other, the way that we tear each other down. That's so off-putting in general. So to have our MPs and our MSPs spearheading this behaviour, it begs belief, and it needs to bloody well stop pronto. This side, the election, if the leadership can't get it under control, it is going to continue to cause much more division, many more ructions, and it is going to make it so much harder for people to put their X beside that box in May. for the majority of people out with the SNP bubble, it very much is a situation where they're holding their nose to vote this time round. And in putting the Rex beside the SNP, it is done almost grudgingly, if not absolutely grudgingly, because there are faults within the party. They have run unchecked, and this is a point I think that we all need to be aware of. Absolute power corrupts, absolutely. And the SNP have had absolute power for far too long in terms of their sway over the independence movement. And that's, I suppose you could say that's our fault because we let it happen. But we did so in good faith. We did it in good faith, and we shouldn't beat ourselves up about it because there are hierarchy members of the SNP who are actually just a bunch of tubes who should know better, who should be able to conduct themselves better, because you know what? They get paid 100 grand a year to watch their P's and Q's and to treat people with a bit of dignity and respect. And if they can't treat their own support with that dignity and respect, including their nice fancy salaries that they all enjoy, then they shouldn't be in their position. But the real problem that we've got is our votes are held hostage to the SNP right now. We don't have a choice. Well, I suppose we do have a choice. We can choose not to vote or spoil our ballot. We can choose to only give our second vote to a smaller party. Or, you know, the choice is that we grin and bear it and we put our X beside the SNP, even though it galls a lot of people to do exactly that. But it's fear. It is fear that drives these attacks, because the reality is, without people like you, Gareth, without Barhead Boy, without Wings Over Scotland, a lot of people would be in the dark about what's actually going on in the Scottish Parliament, because most people show up on the date they're told to. They make an X in the box. They don't all go out and knock doors, make phone calls, deliver leaflets. That's a small portion of our movement. So we're not doing ourselves any favours by allowing the SNP's fear of losing their absolute power to destroy a movement that was built on putting our differences aside for the common good, for the common goal. And I think it was it David said earlier about we are seriously lacking in obvious leadership. We are lacking somebody to put their head above the parapet and go, I'm going to be your Pied Piper, follow me. Yeah. And we will take whatever they throw at us, but we're doing it anyway. And that has been something that's been sadly missing. And I think John will agree with me, wherever he is, his screen's disappeared from mine, but I think John will agree with me on this, is that we've lost that ability since 2014 to just be bold and say, we're doing it anyway. That's how the Yes movement succeeded. We didn't wait for permission. We didn't wait for somebody to direct how we could do it. We got up. People across Scotland got up on a Saturday morning with no training, no expertise, and went and stood in street corners with a Yes flag and went, I think independence is good for Scotland. Come and talk to me about it, and I will try and convince you by the power of my argument. And we went from 23% to 45%. And that was never supposed to happen. We were never supposed to get that far. And it was done by the people, not the politicians. The politicians took a back seat. It was you, it was me, it was the people who took their own time to do the legwork. And that is what the SNP have lost sight of when they go attacking independence bloggers and independence supporters who don't necessarily toe the party line. And that needs to change.
Marion, can I just say, I didn't say that we haven't had that. I think what I said was that we are lacking, if you like, the vision, and I think we need the vision. All I would say, and it's how I conduct myself on social media. So I've managed to avoid most of the scandals. I don't really pay that much attention to some of it because I don't think it's important. I think everyone needs to sit and think before they send something out. Do you think this is going to help win more support, or do you think this turns people off? Because if this is how we're acting within ourselves, and we're all meant to be on the same side, then who needs the unionist media against us if we can do it all on our own? So I think it's become about because we've not had something to focus on for 6 years, and instead of having something to focus on and deliver, I think to be fair to the current leadership of the party, we have had a few things through hand grenades thrown at us which weren't expected. 2 snap elections, Brexit, which went the wrong way and nobody thought was going to happen. These things have now been thrown at us that probably we would be in a different position if they hadn't happened, but they have. And I think we've had leadership that was very careful and steering the boat to avoid the rocks, and that's fine. However, in this position that we're now in, we're now, unfortunately, a victim. Brexit has been forced upon us. We're losing jobs. It's damaging our economy. It's not what we voted for. And I don't know if anyone...
We're blocked from trading
to
the West, Ireland, and to the East, Europe. So we're back in the 1700s.
Weren't we independent then?
Right back to the 1700s. And they're still using the same arguments.
Yeah. Absolutely.
You will be a foreigner if you leave the United Kingdom.
Yeah.
I mean, how ludicrous is that?
Yeah.
But everything that's being said here is based on a lack of leadership, a lack of somebody taking the lead and giving people something to focus about. And I would have to be honest and say, David, that I don't think the party was caught unawares by Brexit. I think they knew it was coming, because I remember campaigning in 2014 and warning people that Brexit was a very real possibility. It didn't really come as a surprise. The only thing that came as a surprise was that they were actually bold enough to just do it. And here's the thing about that. Their referendum was the same process and the same setup as what our process would be if we turned me into a plebiscite. They didn't seek permission. They didn't need any legal definition to hold their plebiscite referendum. They did it, but they used their power in government to use the result that they wanted to achieve their goal. Exactly the same as what we would do if we could get a plebiscite in May. It would be an option for people. Yeah, plebiscite's an option. But if the result comes in that we want, our government would have the right to pursue that result if it went our way. And that's exactly how Brexit came about.
Yeah, fantastic, Marion. Before we move on, I think Suzanne's got another couple of folk to bring in.
I do, yes. Can we bring in Jim Barlow and Scott Davis? If you can both unmute and come in to ask your questions. We'll start off with Jim first.
I keep thinking you're going to bring in the pandas from Edinburgh Zoo.
Not tonight, no.
How many people have you got lined up out there?
There's still a few hands up there. We've got a wee while to go, so we'll have to try and get through as many as we can. Okay. So if we can bring Jim in first.
Thank you. Yes, comrades. Much of this discussion in the last hour is focused on the question of the Scottish Government, Scottish Parliament, the May elections, who we should vote for, etc., etc. But I want to really kind of agree with Nathalia, who at the start of this meeting spoke about a Nicaraguan leader who said politics is won in the streets. And I agree with that. I agree with the idea that if you want to change society and change anything, you need people on the streets, but not just on the streets. I think we have to go further than that. We have to say that the streets is important. And I've been on the streets, like lots of people who are on this call tonight, 100,000 in Edinburgh, tens of thousands in Dundee, where I live, demanding independence, fighting for independence, all under one banner. And I have to say that now in Scotland, we actually have another organisation called Now Scotland. I don't know how many people tonight are on, and I'd be interested to know what the panellists think about Now Scotland, because Now Scotland are arguing that on the streets and in the trade union movement is where we can actually change things. And I believe that if we really want to make independence for Scotland, that we have to focus on the streets and focus on the trade union movement. And I know that Now Scotland as a new organisation, which is a membership organisation, want to focus on that particular aspect, on the streets and in the trade unions. And I think, you know, we know that civil disobedience is a possibility. Many people are, I've marched from one park to another in Dundee and one park to another all over Scotland. I'm tired of doing that. I think we need much more than just marching. We need the civil disobedience. We need to be saying, we're not paying this, we're not paying that, we're going to march here, and we're going to stop the streets. We're going to stop the streets for hours, and we're going to stop everything that actually matters. And the key to doing this also is within the trade union movement and focusing on their power in the factories. Because if they stop factories, the bosses in Scotland and England don't make money. Leave it there, Colin.
Thank you very much, Jim. I like that passion. Can we bring Scott in next for his question as well?
Can I just add that Jim's a very good demonstration of some supporters being more intense in their expression, mode of expression than others. And when it comes to things like wings, they should put that into practice. We can't all be super cool and intellectual. Sometimes it's important to move from dissent to resistance. And that's what Jim has just explained. And I agree with him entirely.
Thank you, Gareth. Scott, can we have your question?
Yeah, no problem. Just a quick one here. Just to say, Jim, before I agreed, especially the first part in terms of all under one banner and the idea that, you know, change happens in physical spaces, and it is hard with the pandemic at the moment, but you know, all these arguments that we're seeing on social media and stuff, you know, when people enact local democracy in person, you know, I think people are less likely to be so polemic. So, you know, I think this type of stuff can happen in the streets, physically, in assemblies, person to person, and hopefully we can get back to that sooner the better with the pandemic stuff. Just a quick question to David Henry is, of course, you know, strategies for independence. We're looking at SNP has so many activists and members. Obviously, if the argument is that Nicola Sturgeon and everyone is too involved, too caught up in COVID fighting and all the rest of it, what are the groups of people who are SNP members? Like, are they strategizing for independence? You know, these white papers and things should be coming from the grassroots anyway. It should be through dialogues and consultations with party membership. You know, is this happening at all? And if not, I think that's a kind of sign that nothing's being delegated beyond kind of SNP central office at the moment.
Well,
thanks very much, Scott. Bring you in, David, to answer
right,
that point.
To answer, since you've specifically asked me about what, if anything, is happening in the SNP. Well, the SNP's obviously got a lot of members with lots of different expertise. I am aware that there has been a bit of a sea change with our NEC following the November election, and that's to be welcomed. Not sure it's quite operating the way I would have liked to have seen it, but it's early days. The new convener for policy development, there's been a change there, because it certainly will come as no surprise that nothing much happened in the last 12 months. That is put down to the fact COVID has affected us, and therefore there hasn't been any physical meetings happening. However, I happen to think it's exactly why someone like me and others have come together every Saturday night in a group about the Constitution. It started about talking about the Constitution, and I don't know how actually who came up with the idea that we really need to get some form of draft manifesto. How on earth? And so that's what's been happening for the last quite a few weeks. A panel of people have met, discussions have happened. Drafts have been sent backwards and forwards, and we've now got the document. We've launched it. It's gone out there. We've sent it to every single MSP. Every Scottish MP has got it too. We've sent it to all councillors. So it will be being discussed over the next week. The idea is now that everyone else can read it. You get round it. You pull your own people together. You discuss it. It's not that radical, really. It is a leap in the dark to a certain degree, which is that we are saying we're not going down this route with Section 30. Forget it. The Scotland Act. Somebody's asked me questions earlier about, oh, but how does this impact the Scotland Act? The Scotland Act doesn't exist after the 6th of May. It doesn't exist because the Scotland Act is about devolution. Devolution doesn't exist after the 6th of May either. Now you've got to put everything else in place. I'm not going to say it's going to be easy, because it won't be easy. It'll be a hell of a lot of work for an awful lot of people. The 2-page plan, which you can, as I say, download, it's got 10 points in it. One of them is we recall all our MPs immediately, and we task them with working here in Edinburgh, because we're going to have laws put in place. We're going to have to start doing trade deals with Europe, you name it. All that is there to be done. So what is happening? Lots of people are meeting and discussing things. I know that there's the finance and currency group. They've been meeting on a regular basis. You'll find them. That's Tim Rideout. He's got quite a lot of experts that have been feeding into that. So it's not fair to say nothing's been done. There is things being done. And I sent this yesterday because I have had discussions online with Keith Brown, who's our deputy leader. And I sent that to him and said it would be coming to him just before it becomes live. We hope that I hope, and if the one thing that comes out of this is we could get the SNP to accept that one sentence and maybe agree to number 1 and 2, which is international recognition, which I believe would happen almost immediately. If we've done a proper democratic vote, there's no reason why a country like Ireland or Malta or any of the European countries won't immediately say we recognize the legitimacy of what people have just voted for. Bingo. You've now got your sovereignty, it's recognized. Now you've got the hard work of probably, I mean, we've said two years transition period. The idea started by saying, why are we looking at this currently of trying to get permission to hold a referendum, which has already been refused several times? Why do you think they're going to change their mind? There's no logic why they would change their mind. So why are we trying to do that? Why aren't we doing what Brexit did? Brexit was created by people with not a single bit of work of a plan. They just came along and launched a campaign and told everybody that you'll save £350 million a week. They went around the country with a big bus. It wasn't true. That didn't stop them saying it. People voted a majority in the UK as a whole to jump off a cliff, not knowing what the plan was. There was no plan. There was no white papers. There was no nothing. If anybody watched it like I did the next morning and saw Michael Gove and Boris Johnson at the press conference being told they had won, and the look of shock on their faces, thinking, oh God, what are we going to do now? Because they didn't think they were going to win. Now, look at the mess they've made. It is a mess.
Farage knew David quite well, that one of the worst qualities of the English is their distrust of what they call Johnny Foreigner and intellectuals. He knew that was still there, latent, and he exploited that together with the white English's complaints about too many areas, Bradford and the like, becoming Pakistani and all Indian. And where are English values gone? You know, where is English gone? Our culture. So he exploited that to the full. He did exactly what Trump did. He whipped up that xenophobia and built on it, and it got him over the line. Personally, I really think he should be imprisoned, but unfortunately, he's got a regime in Parliament at Westminster who think he's a hero.
Can I say though, Gareth, I happen to think that Boris Johnson is a great recruiter for Scottish independence. If anything underlines why we need to take control of our own country, it's because of people like him.
Well, I agree, but that's a negative. We have to tell people in Scotland the positives, which is what the SNP has not done because it's been chasing severely flawed amateur policies for tiny percentages of society. We have to concentrate on that. You know, I'll try and give you the edited version. We know now that the Vietnamese War was totally illegal. It was illegal when it was happening. The Americans carpet bombed it on the theory of the communist domino effect. If we didn't wipe out an absolutely beautiful country of peasants who lived off the land, then the march of Mao Zedong and communism would just come towards America one day, or take over Europe. They carpet bombed it and dropped pesticides, which are still affecting people. Mothers still giving birth to children who have no arms or legs. The things the American did were absolutely terrible. And Nixon got elected on the basis that he was going to withdraw troops. It was unpopular by then. There were so many American males refusing to be part of the army, refusing to be recruited, including the great Muhammad Ali, of course. It wasn't, he said in his own diary, Richard Nixon, it was not until he saw the overwhelming numbers in marches, until at least 3 people set fire to themselves, like monks did in Vietnam. The woman who leapt off the top of a tall building in protest killed herself. It wasn't until those became severe resistance that he realized he had no choice. And he admits he would never have stopped the bombing. He would have increased it if it was not for that massive resistance. So yes, that's exactly what we need to do in Scotland, but not kill ourselves. We need everybody here to resist the onset of Boris Johnson's dream of a new empire.
Thank you, Gareth. Can we bring Nathalia in, because the first person to ask a question, Jim, mentioned how much you had inspired him. So I wanted to know if there was anything that you wanted to say on what he had asked about getting out onto the streets.
Yes, I would like to say, just following what Gareth said about like Scotland being a country that people are wishing for the independence because to make us rid of Boris Johnson. I think we deserve better than this. Honestly, all the hard work that people here are doing, we deserve more than just, oh, they are having a bad breakup with the Tories. Like we need more. And that's why it's so important to have initiatives like now Scotland, because some people feel put off when they have to be party members. Not everybody wants to be a party member. Some people are scared to be party members, especially now the immigrant community. Some have terrible experience in their homelands. So it's important to have something that is popular, that is solely talking about independence, because I'm generally someone that does not believe that you cannot polarize a subject. But independence is something that should not be polarized. It's independence because we need independence. I believe that politics is popular, politics is passion, and there is nothing that can be more passion than to find your own freedom, to fight for emancipation. So I think it's a worth cause to everybody to be engaged with. So that's why I think, of course, I understand the pandemic, but I think that the movement, in a proper independence movement, will not be made within posh rooms and in the parliament, will be made by people in the streets and within trade unions, between the factories, within the migrant communities and the poorest neighborhoods.
I agree. The people who lost out in September 2014, where the working class in Glasgow and Dundee, the very people who voted for Scotland's independence, the people we think are not fully informed, these were the people who stood up and said, yeah, let's run our own country again, not because we hate our next door neighbour, but because we want to be on equal terms and we want to live the lives as we set our values and our culture. So yeah, the working class were the ones who lost out. And I have to tell you, I feel ashamed that I live in the capital of Scotland, where people rioted in the streets and set fire to houses in 1707 because they were not given the vote. They didn't want to join a union. But in 2014, Edinburgh voted to stay in the United Kingdom. But then, we're full of lawyers here and they don't know any better.
Yep.
Yeah.
Go on, Marion, have you got anything to add to this?
Well, actually, Gareth has opened a wee door for me to make a point about one of the reasons why I'm here and why I'm still an activist and campaigner for independence. I am the working class person who worked harder than I can ever really describe to anybody in 2014. And I'm from West Dunbartonshire, where we voted yes and we won. We delivered on the promise that we made to the people here, and we delivered that yes. And I know how good it feels to hear that officer say, you made the grade. And we sang that night and we cried and we celebrated, because the hope was something that you cannot imagine. To get that result and hope, because there was still a chance at that point, it's an indescribable feeling. And whenever I get low and when I get frustrated and I want to give up, it's that moment that keeps me going. That moment where I heard my presiding officer say, you did it. And I would love nothing more than for every single person in Scotland to feel what we felt that night. And all our classes, all our differences, none of it mattered, because the one goal was independence. And I'll borrow a quote from another campaigner. The only thing that changes with independence is the power to change everything. And I think we've lost sight of that. We've been bogged down in personality politics and party politics, and a lot of the comments are right here as I'm reading them coming in. There's been a fear attached to the option of civil disobedience. I myself argued against it just a couple of years ago because I genuinely didn't think it was the right time for that level of civil disobedience. My opinion has changed. I think I'm at a point now where, come the May election, between this manifesto for Indy, which I look forward to reading, but this idea that's been put around for the plebiscite in May is really important. And I think we should absolutely bombard our politicians and any elected representatives day and bloody night and put the pressure right on them, because it is the first stage of the people taking back their power. If the SNP don't listen to us, they will pay the price for it, not in this election, but in the next one. And they need to keep that in mind. The SNP enjoy power because the Yes movement made them powerful. That power can be taken back if they don't deliver what they promised to deliver.
Right, the power resides in us, and you should know that Alan Pinkerton, the famous creator of the American Detective Agency, was a Gorbals man, and he believed in the overthrow of unpopular governments. So Glasgow has that tradition in its blood. So I'm not surprised that the people of Glasgow overwhelmingly realised where the future lay. It didn't lie with a Westminster government.
That's brilliant. Okay, so we're going to get a couple more questions in from Zoom. So first up, we've got Ray Young, and then we've got Chris Cook. So Ray's got a few questions, but if you just stick to one of them, the one that stood out to me, Ray, was about the current issues in the SNP and how that has got the potential or not to split the party and derail things. And then we've got Chris Cook. I don't know what your question is, so it's a bit of a surprise, but if we can get Ray up first, on you go, mate.
Hey guys, how you doing? Thanks for
Hi,
this is fantastic. Just to interject before my first question is that surely everybody on this panel, we all want independence for Scotland. So surely we all should be focused on the SNP for that vote. I know there'll be some grumbling somewhere along there, but SNP are the only way for that independence vote. Now, I have a number of questions. The questions, I'm ex-Army, I'm ex-British Army, and I can give you my spiel as to why I fell into the SNP independence vote, but I don't think I've got enough time for that. But my questions are, do you think the Stushy, if it is a Stushy, I don't know if it's a Stushy or not, I don't know, but there seems to be a fallout between Alex, Nicola and Joanna. There seems to be a party fallout there, and there's going to be rumblings next week on that. Do you think this is going to split the party, and will this affect our vote for independence? The next question is, what will an armed forces be like in an independent Scotland? And the third question is, what is the currency going to be like for an independent Scotland? It's a big question. I'm the treasurer for my local branch in Grangemouth, and I fully understand the buoyancy of the economy of Scotland, and we're fully buoyant. We've got all this great drinks, and well, the fish is kind of falling apart a bit, eh? But we clearly are a buoyant economy. We can survive, but I need to sell this to people that and what would that economy be? So there's a question. And if you want me to sell you my view, my journey to an independent supporter, I can do that. But obviously that's not the question. So they are love you guys. All the best.
That's great. Thanks, Ray. So that's brilliant. There's quite a lot there, obviously, so the panelists can have a wee think in that for a moment. Chris Cook, next, if you want to ask your question, please.
Well, it's about strategy, because we're here to discuss strategies for independence. And everything that I've heard is about the assumption that we're going to have top-down independence, that we're going to go from, Westminster down to Holyrood, and we all see how top-down policy making is. Very few people contribute to it. Now, I believe that West Lothian questions have West Lothian answers. And I believe very strongly that independence can be achieved in parallel. So irrespective of what we're doing in terms of getting out there and demonstrating and getting political independence, which I'm entirely in favour of, it is also possible, as we see now post-COVID, mutual aid breaking out all over locally. Right? It's mutuality, solidarity is so much more evident in Scotland than it is down south, which you can tell from, that's where I'm from. So I propose energy independence, housing independence, food independence, care independence. All of these independences are achievable bottom up if we look at the financial matters in terms of mutual credit creation, mutual investment at local level. I used to work in the city. I'm better now. I'm an expert on resilience, etc., etc. And what Gareth said about climate change, hugely interested in that. My core competence is in energy. Just look at the map of Denmark, Gareth, in 1990, and look at it in 2014, and it's gone from big red spots where all the generators were. I call that the national grid. It looks like measles has broken out, because they've basically distributed and decentralized power right the way and heat right throughout Denmark. And they did that through strategic approach to policy making, Gareth. Energy independence is resilience, is security, is bottom-up independence.
I agree with that wholeheartedly. Absolutely, yeah. The SNP party have gathered in power, and although some of my readers are disappointed, I've never asked for Nicola Sturgeon to step down. I think that's a party issue, and we will have to see what happens with the trials and tribulations over the hunting of Alex Salmond. But I have, in the last few years, considered she's well out of her depth. And that's why I asked for her to step aside, carry on the role with the COVID pandemic, see to other business. The last I heard was about 3 weeks ago that she had set up a unit for independence. Unfortunately, whoever she put on it, I can't remember, except for one Italian Scot, who seemed to me to be a nice guy, but not much else, not really qualified. So I'm trying to agree with you wholeheartedly that power has to be devolved from Edinburgh out to all the areas. We have some problems, such as Aberdeen and part of the Orkneys and Shetlands.
Thanks, Gareth. Okay, so who should we go to next? Marion, do you want to speak? And if I can just ask everybody, because we're running out of time here a wee bit, so it's impossible to answer every question that came up there. There's so much. I mean, currency, you could probably talk on that for ages. So try and limit it to maybe about 3 or 4 minutes, please, everybody.
All righty, I will start with the first part of Ray's question about the split in the leadership right now. Personally, my feeling is that both Nicola and Alec have been stitched up by their own people. It may be a controversial view, but they are human beings. They are not immune to such actions. And as much as we held them in pedestals, I think it's entirely possible that there have been some knives put in a lot of backs, regardless of whose back it is. These 3 people that you've mentioned, Alec, Nicola and Joanna, they're particularly vulnerable to attack because they're so good at what they do. They put their heads above the parapet and they make themselves targets regardless of what they're saying. They could say the sky is blue and people would tell them it's pink just for the sake of doing so. Regards to split the party, we have a chance to stop it from happening. But the only way to do that is if somebody, namely, and I'm going to just be blunt about it, Keith Brown is the biggest disappointment for me. He was appointed independent SAR when he was appointed deputy leader of the party. And from my end, from what I know, he's done absolutely nothing to really work the situation, create an environment where people can get involved and focus their attentions. And I believe that if he would step up and do his job, there would be an opportunity for members of the party and supporters of independence to come together. And it wouldn't matter about the personality politics going on behind the scenes. It would be back about us, back about the important issue, the focus on independence, and yes, to an extent, good governance, good record of governance in Scotland. But really, it's about getting the focus back on the end goal, because like I said earlier, the thing that changes with independence is the power to change everything. Now, forces. What will forces look like in an independent Scotland? Well, they'll look the same as they do in every other country. There'll be some. We'll use the likes of the Edinburgh Barracks for the Army. We'll use Fastlane for the Navy. We'll use Lossiemouth for the Air Force. The infrastructure exists. Why do we need to overcomplicate the situation? All we would be doing is changing the name on the door. And instead of the British Army, it would be the Scottish Army. There's really so much bluff and bluster put about this. And it's as straightforward as that. When it comes to currency, I'm going to steal the show here and say, we will use whichever currency you want to buy our goods in. Because that's the reality of our world today. We don't need a pound. We don't need a euro. We don't need kroners. It's digital. It's a nonsense argument.
We print our own money.
Trade
we print
in
our
whatever
own money.
we want to.
We'll use our own money.
Yeah, we have our own Scottish pound, exactly. It's long established. It predates the Union. It is written up by Scottish Silver and a few other things. The Bank of England have, on 2 occasions now, conceded that Scotland is a perfectly wealthy nation with cracking resources. We really do not need to worry about the issue of currency. It is an absolute red herring. You will buy our goods and we will deal in whatever you want to offer us to pay for them, except in sheep and stuff. I mean, we've moved on for trading in camels. We expect a digital currency, but it can be done. And I think that pretty much sums up my answer there.
Thank you, Marion. Thank you very much. That was wonderful. Okay, David, you're next.
It made me laugh. I think it was Ray that in some of these questions, because they weren't exactly small subjects. On the armed forces, I think, and I have no insight into what the SNP thinks is policy, but in some of the research that I did, one, I think it would be a much more streamlined facility, because we don't need some of the things that the British Armed Forces has. We're not really a warmongering nation. We're much more of a peacemaking nation. So I think it might be called the Scottish Defence Force. Obviously, we have a need for some navy because we have an awful lot of water to patrol and to protect. But the one thing that I think that would be different, currently we pay £3.5 billion a year to Westminster for our share of defence spending from Scotland. But only 1 billion of that is actually spent in Scotland. So we are subsidising the rest of the UK by £2.5 billion. So I don't think we'd be spending that, which then brings me back to something which you didn't touch on, and no one else actually today has touched on. What are we getting independence for, and why is it going to be better than what we've currently got? I think one of the main things, and I did vote for this at conference, and I did some research, and I didn't get to speak on it, is the state pension. And I'm very pleased to see that there's a campaign now out there in the public. The state pension is the worst state pension in the whole of Europe. The UK is not a success story. It's the worst pension in Western Europe, in fact, in the whole of Europe. So it doesn't take too much for the independent Scotland to offer a better pension than what is being paid to its pensioners at the moment from Westminster. So I think that is something that we need to be, one, pushing, and also showing. Let's not do a Labour Party. Let's show how we afford it. Well, we afford it straight away by saving £2.5 billion on the defence, which we won't be paying. Then there was another two things that I calculated we won't be paying. So you ask what's it going to be like afterwards? We're not going to be paying £2.5 billion extra for the defence. We're not going to be paying towards HS2. We're not going to be paying towards Crossrail in London, and we're not going to be paying to renew Trident. Funny enough, you add all them up, you find out you can not only afford to double the pension for all pensioners, but it's got some money spare. So that's one of the things. You said about currency. What currency? I don't really have a strong view on currency. I've been very impressed with the work by the currency group, which is Tim Rideout, and he's got economists on that, and I've looked at it, and I'd be perfectly happy to have a Scottish pound and a Scottish central bank. I'd also be perfectly happy to adopt the euro. I don't care what the piece of paper is. So I don't think we have much to worry about when it comes to currency. And will people trade with us? Well, somebody mentioned about energy, housing. Right. Energy, we export energy, all types, electricity, gas, oil. Scotland exports energy. And in fact, if you were to cut off the national grid to cross the border, England can't keep its lights on. So I think you'll find they'll be quite happy to trade with us, and they will have to trade with us in the currency that we trade in. So this goes without saying.
We'll have to tell Boris that he won't even get a light on in a fridge.
Right.
Well, yes. Oh, but he's got an oven-ready deal for that, like everything else. So about this, and then the last question was about the Scooshy in the party and fallout, and what will it impact? Well, if we're not careful, yes, it will impact on the election, and that would be a great shame, I think. The whole point of coming up with something positive that people can go and look at, read, argue about, discuss, and then push and coalesce around is to give people something positive to talk about and to look at. On housing, I think so. I disagree completely with Chris Cook on the idea that we can get independence by doing it but sector by sector. I don't agree. You cannot do it like that, because to go down that means you're stuck in the union with Westminster, and they've got controls over just about everything. We only control 15% of our tax take. They control 85%. So how on earth are you going to control all these different sectors that you think you're going to be able to do? So I believe we do need to take this approach. I think we need to be bold, and it's been said before. I think Nathalia, you said something about, if you like, people who now live here who now have a vote. It's extremely important that all Scots register to vote. You know, I was very proud and pleased. I helped run our local EU campaign here in my part of Edinburgh, in my constituency. And we reached out to the Polish community, and we did posters in Polish, and we put them in supermarkets, and we put out registration forms, postal forms, plus details of the SNP, obviously. And went back, there was none left after the election. They were all gone, they'd all been taken. So that was several hundred had been used. It's very important that people feel empowered. There's no point going out on the streets at grassroots if you haven't bothered to register to vote. You're only going to change things if you vote to change it. By all means, get involved in grassroots activism, but for God's sake, make sure you're registered to vote and actually vote.
Thank you, David. Now, Nathalia, if you can remember what the questions were, if you want to give us an answer towards them. I think there was a few different points, so the floor is yours.
Well, there are many things I'm particularly concerned about, like NATO and things like that. Coming from my political stance is that NATO is horrible, but I think that now we have our goal is independence, so we should just keep talking about how to achieve that goal. I think the rest is, like I said, the rest. And I believe that to make a proper campaign, we have to be involved in the cause and believe in the cause. Otherwise, other people won't believe in us if we don't believe what we are selling. This is capitalism 101. So I think that if we don't have assurance of what we are doing, what we are saying, what we want, and putting conditions and like making stories and what ifs in our minds, like, oh, the EU will say that, the Westminster will say this. We don't know. We don't have a crystal ball. We can't talk about the future. We can analyze, we can guess, but we have to first and mainly to stick with what we want, that is independence. I just want to finish because this is hugely important, because I'm someone that is dedicated my whole professional life in building bridges, international bridges of solidarity, of companionship between countries and good relationships, which is something that my princess dream, like we say in Brazil, is to make Scotland a country that has a different relationship with the global south, not a imperialist or a colonial better than you relationship type of thing. So I just want to finish saying something that is from the bottom of my heart, and also from the America's liberador, Simón Bolívar. He said that it's easier for a country that is to release a nation from servitude than to enslave a free nation. I think this is something we have to keep in mind before doing anything to achieve independence. Thank you so much for having me here tonight.
Thank you, Nathalia. That was a lovely way to finish off that question, wasn't it? That was lovely. Okay, so we're kind of running out of time now, so I'm afraid we won't be able to get any more questions in. However, now we're going to come to our summing up. So each of you will get a few minutes to sum up, and we're going to go with Gareth first.
Well, I'll be very brief. No matter the disagreements that have erupted in the Scottish National Party, no matter the things that will be strewn in our path between now and the referendum, which I hope will be incorporated in the election, because another Section 30 is just another handing authority over to the Tory party in London, and they will laugh up their sleeves. So all I want to say is that no nation ever rose up to demand its abolition. Independence will arrive.
Thank you, Gareth. Next, Marion, if you want some closing comments.
Again, I can keep it very brief. I will remind people that the most important thing we need to hold on to is that with independence comes the power to change everything. That means that we can solve where arguments, petty or otherwise, we can solve our currency issues, and we can do all these things that have held us back all this time. And I support the plebiscite in May, and I very much hope that the SNP listen to us and make that happen, because it's a risk-averse choice. They're not committed, but it gets us moving forward, and it gives the people something to work to and something to offer. And I'll stop there. Thanks.
Thank you, Marion. David?
I'll try and keep it brief. I think, well, I'm here to try and explain what the Manifesto for India actually wants to happen, and what we want you, the voters, and the supporters of whatever political party you're a supporter of, but obviously, especially if you're the SNP. It's now in at every level at the SNP, so they're not unaware of it. It may not be welcome, who knows? But then again, we may actually be giving them part of the solution. So the main point, and what we're asking them to accept on the 6th of May and to be in the manifesto, is that the following statement. So the Manifesto for India statement says, the Scottish people assert that the Scottish Parliament is the only Parliament that is empowered to represent the sovereign rights of the Scottish people. If they accept that, and that's in there, and you've voted for a party that stated that, you have voted for Scotland's sovereign parliament to be the Scottish Parliament. Westminster doesn't get a say. That's it, it's over. Then we state that there should be a 2-year transition period. And there's lots and lots of work to do in there. I would say that we should focus less on the conflict and the internal squabbles or the personalities. And I certainly agree, we've had a lot of personality politics, I think, because our leader, both the previous one and the current one, is very popular, very good on television. And as a result of that, the party tends to hang its whole raison d'etre on its leadership. And I don't think that's always healthy. So I want to see more people involved. Don't leave it up to somebody else to do it. Make sure you get involved. Make sure you get voting. Because if you don't and you disengage, and then the people that win, or the thing that wins, is apathy. And if we're apathetic, we may be in for a terrible shock on the 6th of May, a bit like we were a bit of a shock when we had Brexit. So now's the time. Let's do it.
Thank you, David. That was great. And lastly, Nathalia, I know you gave a kind of summing up comment before, but the floor is yours again. If you please feel free to sum up how you felt the evenings went.
I just want to thank everybody. It was very inspirational to hear you all, because as a new Scot, it's very humbling to hear you, that are people that are dedicating your lives to fight for independence. And I hope that I would not have to spend so much of time fighting, because hopefully we will be independent soon. And I will be here to help you to build a proper, progressive, independent Scotland. And we'll be very happy to be with you doing whatever you let me do to support you guys.
I want to see how many of those Russian dolls behind you can get into Doctor Who's TARDIS.
I don't think TARDIS can open, sorry.
It's bigger on the inside.
Yes,
exactly, yeah. She's got a TARDIS sitting there.
Yeah.
Thank you very much. And thank you to all of you. I mean, no matter what, how we go forward, how we use the election in May or how we don't use the election in May. I am encouraged just by the fact that there's so many strong voices actually coming out and saying things. I mean, I know that some of you were nervous. Marion, you were nervous because it's your first time, but honestly, you were such an inspiration. There's people, I mean, I could have said what you said tonight. It was just fantastic.
Marion was nervous.
She was nervous. She said, at the start, she was nervous.
Yeah. If that's her nervous, what is she like when she's confident?
Oh, Gareth, that's dangerous territory.
I don't mind women leaving me. It's when they walk towards me I get nervous.
You're a wise man indeed.
Absolutely. And just to also point out all the love that people have been sending to you, Gareth, in the chat.
Yeah.
Wishing you well. I mean, it's just, I've been sitting here and I'm so touched by everything that I've seen. I hope you can look at the chat list and have a look at what's been said to you.
Well, I'm not my usual colour. My wife noticed it. She, being a Royal Academician painter and master printmaker, respected the world over as a colourist. She was the first to notice I was not, as she said, Italian brown anymore. I was Indian yellow. And so I was whisked off to hospital with jaundice. So, yeah, I know my fate, folks, but I'll keep fighting until the end.
Lovely meeting you,
Gareth. Gareth. We
thank you very much.
Absolutely. We're really happy that you were able to attend. We were so worried about you at the start of the week, and we were so pleased that you've got back home.
Just send me money. Just send me money. You don't have to send me good wishes.
Send me cash.
Just send me money.
Just spoken like a true Scot. Spoken like a true Scot. Just send me money.
What is all this good wishes stuff? I'm up to hearing good wishes.
Yeah. Good wishes don't buy the wine.
Also, just to say a big thank you to the people that are working behind the scenes tonight. We've got Kevin from Indie Live. We have Gordon and Alison, who have done a fantastic job of moderating in the chat tonight and bringing people in and out and unmuting people and muting people. So thank you very much to everybody. Thanks to everybody who attended the Zoom and anybody who is watching on the live stream as well. Thank you so much. It wouldn't be worth anything if you weren't all here, so thank you. And I'll pass you over to Neil now.
Thanks, Suzanne. Yeah, and just to reiterate, I've really enjoyed this tonight. It's been really entertaining and educational. And you've all been great panelists. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you for your effort, Neil. I will use this moment to tell you.
Yeah.
Thank you, Gareth. Thank you very much. And so we come to the end of the panel. We're going to have an article out. All Indo Banner's got an article out next week in the National, and it's going to be an update about our plans for 2021. Some things are going to have to change from what's billed at the moment, but certainly we're going to continue to adapt to the circumstances, and we'll be hitting the streets as soon as possible and letting our elected officials know they need to get the finger out. So 100%, but that'll be next week. But just to thank everybody tonight, thank the behind the scenes, the tech team, Alison, Gordon and Kevin. And we're going to launch a series of these panels in a winner soon, get them all up online in the run up to the election. So there's plenty more to come, plenty more. So once again, thanks everybody for tuning in, whether you've taken part in the Zoom meeting or if you've just tuned into one of the live streams. I hope you had a great evening, and we'll see you soon. Good night.